Welcome back to the Upper Tier Podcast, the football podcast we bring you each and every day on the Upper Tier on YouTube. Audio versions show are available through Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. Joining me tonight for a special episode where we said we'd take a look at Manchester United in a bit of turmoil at the moment, and we're calling the episode Then and Now. Joining me as always, my partner on the show is Darren. How are we?
I'm all good, brother. How are you?
Good, good. Safe to say you were getting a nice little reaction on TikTok to some of your clips from the Monday mashup. If anyone hasn't checked that out, go over there and check that out. Darren, a man who wears his heart on his sleeve when he talks about his club, very disappointed in them at the moment. So we said to fill the gap between the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, we do a little episode, having a look at Man United, having a look at some of the things maybe they've done good, some of the things they've done bad, where the pitfalls are and where they find themselves now. Safe to say, not in a great place with a lot of the talk that's leaking from the club at the moment. Some of it fact, some of it fiction, I'd imagine. Where to begin? Where do you want to talk? Where do you want to begin with this? You're the Manchester United fan, so this is kind of your episode to just soundboard off me, really.
Yeah, like, I suppose for me, obviously we look back at 8 years ago and Fergie leaving the club, I think it was a shock to United fans. I know it was a shock to a lot of the players. We've talked about Van Persie before, and he signed a deal because he thought he was coming to United for a set period of time where Ferguson was going to be in charge and they were going to win leagues and challenge for European trophies and stuff like that. And I know there's a lot of guys in the dressing room kind of felt a little bit let down towards the end when he kind of pulled the plug on things so quickly. And that's not to say whether he was right or wrong, but I suppose he'd gotten to a stage with United where it looked from the outside in as if he'd stopped trying to build for the future. And I suppose that's the first misstep we kind of took as a club, where we took our eye off the academy. We took our eye off youth. We took our eye off investing in youth, as opposed to, we'd very rarely gone out and bought somebody that was going to attain, a title for us in the click of a finger, which is what we did with Van Persie. Like, we bought that last title. We'd lost the league the season before to City on goal difference. We had that dramatic last day where United won 1-0 away to Stadium of Light against Sunderland, and City were home against QPR, and it looked to all but the world that we'd won the trophy. And in the end, City get their goals. Yeah. City get their goals, and Aguero gets his winner and stuff like that. And then Ferguson thinks, how do I address this? And he goes and he brings in the best player in the league, other than maybe City and United players at that stage. He goes and gets Van Persie, brings Van Persie in, guarantees goals, gets you a league title, and then Fergie decides to jump on the back of his horse and ride out of town. He's obviously part of the part of the fabric at United, and I know we've spoken about this off air and stuff previously. I don't necessarily think that's a great thing at times, because I feel like maybe he has too much pull around the club, and I think maybe his his word goes a little further than most people's. Everybody has their opinions and everybody has their sounding boards to put stuff out there, but I kind of feel like when Fergie says something, it's taken to the gospel. Do you know what I mean? We don't have to look any further than David Moyes. I mean, David Moyes was Alex Ferguson's choice to replace him. He wasn't necessarily the club's choice. The club backed Ferguson up, but I don't necessarily think the club said, we're going to go and get David Moyes. I think Ferguson looked and said, I know we had this meeting with Guardiola and stuff, and he was on a sabbatical and whatever, and maybe there's a misstep there that, they didn't put a hammer on Guardiola enough to try and nail him down. And we end up with...
Imagine how different history would be if you had got him in.
Do you know what I'm saying? Well, like, when you look at, and again, a lot of the stuff we'll say tonight, it's not stuff that, people are going to hear for the first time, but we're kind of putting it all under one umbrella. I'm a massive fan of what Liverpool are doing at the minute. Although it pains me to say that, being a United fan, but I've said it time and time again. I had a guy doing a bit of work in the house today, and I said the same thing to him. I said, my fear wouldn't be, as a Liverpool fan, it wouldn't be losing Salah. It wouldn't be losing, Mane. It wouldn't be losing Jota. The big fear for Liverpool should be losing Klopp, because Klopp is the diamond that Liverpool, Salah didn't light the world on fire at Basel, Chelsea, Roma. He was a good player. He wasn't any more than a good player. at the three clubs. You know what I mean? He took that next step at Liverpool, but he took it under Jurgen Klopp. You know, the player that they have now in Jota. Jota was a good player at Wolves. He's a better player at Liverpool because
Fergie for years did the same thing as well. He turned very average players into world-class players. He just pumped them up and he knew what to do, didn't he? It's a knack that they have, isn't it?
Yeah, there's, you know, you can instill a certain amount of confidence in a player, can't you? And to me, that's what it looks like. Like those guys spent an awful lot of their time building their players up. If I look at the years post Fergie, it seems like a lot of our managers have spent their time taking our players down.
Yeah.
You know, rather than the opposite, rather than going out and saying, you know what, this guy is a good player. This guy has got attributes. This boy can do this. Like, there's highlight reels for all the players at United at the minute. You could show a highlight reel of every single player in that United dressing room and make it look like they were a very, very good player based on what they've done in the past, be that at national level, be that at United, be that at previous clubs. At the minute, United are devoid of any sort of confidence, tactics, any sort of game plan, and it looks like that. But I mean, it could be a thing where, you know, we need to start going and showing these individual players what they can do again, and putting that bit of confidence into them and saying, you know what, listen, Jadon Sancho, we haven't spent 90 million on a guy because you're not a good footballer. You're one of the biggest talents in Europe here. You know, look at what you've been doing for the last few years at Borussia Dortmund. Yes, Haaland's a super player, but Haaland is only the player he is because of the ammunition you've given him with. You know what I mean? We're not doing that. We're not giving. Instead of that, we're going, oh, Sancho, yeah, he's a bad player. You don't sign bad players for 90 million. You know, that's not how this works. Guys are being devoid of confidence, but they're also not playing in systems that are geared towards getting the best out of them. You know what I mean?
A lot of them are playing out of position and stuff.
Like I don't believe Marcus Rashford and Jadon Sancho can play in a 4-2-2-2. To play in those two number 8 positions, as Ralph calls them, you've got to be extremely technical. You know, two guys like Rashford and Sancho, while they're technical, you also want them to be direct. You want to play them as wingers, not as guys that keep coming on the inside. No, there's got to be opportunities to start going at guys and beating players and giving little 1s, 2s and going inside, going outside, but being very direct and having a lot of width. United for years have created space by keeping width in the team. All of a sudden now we're playing very, very narrow. When you're narrow, it's much easier to defend against because all of a sudden the ball has to come through a certain part of the pitch. And if you line up 2 banks of 4, you've seen how difficult we find it to break them down. You know? So there's got to be drastic changes at United in so many areas, but in the first thing that's got to happen is we've got to start building these guys up again. If I was in charge of United tomorrow, I'd walk into Carrington and I'd say to the guys in charge of the video and the analysis, I'd say, lads, this is what I want. I want a 5-minute presentation on every single player in the squad, and I want the absolute best of what they've done ever on a football pitch, and let's show them again what they're capable of. And if David De Gea has to sit there for 5 minutes watching the saves he makes, watching the distribution, watching this, watching that, show it to him, encourage him, show him, listen, kid, you've got everything. There's nothing you can't do here, right? It's time to now go and start proving it. And we have to. And
him being a bad example because he's actually doing the business.
Right, but I mean, and that's my point. Even if he has to see, it's there for all the world to see with him. But he's an easy one. You know, you've got to do it with guys who aren't having a good time. You got to get Donny van de Beek and you got to go, Donny, here's 5 minutes, kid. Have a look at this. And I would be showing the other guys in the dressing room the clip as well, because there's definitely an element at United now where guys are looking at other guys and there's no trust there. You know, where I get the ball and I go, I can give it to him, and I go, well, yeah, if I give it to him, it's not coming back and we might lose it. So I won't give it there. And then I take too long on the ball, and then I turn to go the opposite way, and all of a sudden the ball is nicked and I go, shit, I don't have the ball again. Do you know what I mean? Rather than if you are very, very comfortable and confident in everybody around you, the ball would play and it would move much quicker than it does. We take too many touches out of the ball every time. And that's something I enjoy about watching City and Liverpool, the pace of play, the tempo, and how quick the ball is moved from A to B, rather than slow, you know?
Yeah, you mentioned Ferguson there and hanging around and the influence that he has and stuff like that. I suppose from the Glazers' point of view, he's really the only footballing guy that they have around, because we know that these guys aren't footballing guys. They're money guys. I know they're heavily involved in sports in the US and stuff like that, but they're really money guys. They're businessmen. So he's that football link there. So if he's providing that football link upwards to the Glazers, surely he's looking down as well. Now, I know it's a different time, and it's from his time, it's nearly a different sport, nearly, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And he's looking down, but surely he can look at United. He can look at the players that are there, and he can say that a 4-2-2-2 never would work, and would never work for United, and has never worked. I don't think. How long has it been? I mean, we're not really talking a 4-2-2-2. We're really talking a 4-4-2. And I don't know any top team at all now that deploys a 4-4-2 at any stage. Depending on, like, unless you're playing really good opposition or something like that, but they never play a 4-4-2. That's like, I don't think players even know what that is anymore. The younger players,
it's archaic. It's archaic. You know, it's BC. It's before Christ. Like, at this stage, you've got to be playing, you know, a 3-5-2 or 5-3-2. So it's when you've got it, you go to 5 in the middle, and when you don't have it, you go to 5 at the back, or you're playing a 4-3-3. Those are the two modern sort of formations that absolutely
destroy 4-4-2.
Right. So then why are we going back to a narrow 4-2-2-2? You know, which takes.
Is this? I suppose I was looking at the other night. Is this Ralph's way of stripping things back to the beginning and trying to figure out where things are from where he can start from and stuff like that? Because we're talking about Ralph going in there, and, like, you know, United fans were kind of excited, because I know on the back of Solskjaer as well. And I mean, some fans will turn around and go, oh, we should have got Conte, and, you know, hindsight is a great thing and stuff like that. You know, if Ralph was in there and he was winning games hand over fist, there'd be no issue. There'd be no talk of Conte.
Absolutely.
But you gotta look at it. Is he trying to figure out I mean, he's only in there for 6 months, basically. That's the talk. And then the new manager is supposed to be coming in. Now, that may or may not be the case, and then he goes upstairs. But is this his way of stripping it down and preparing the foundation for the guy coming in? And United fans just expected to get that new manager kick, but that wasn't really the role that he was coming in to do, really. And is it his way of turning around and go, you know, Ronaldo coming in was a bad thing. Cavani is kind of done. He's time to move on. We don't need Pogba anymore. Is he taking these pieces of Lego out that other managers have tried to do, but he's doing it indirectly? He's not being directly going, I'm done with you and I'm done with you. He's kind of forcing their hand at it.
I'd like to think so, but I think we're giving them too much credit there, if I'm honest. You know, but I would think with him moving upstairs, be it at the end of this season or at the end of next season, because, again, I'm not too sure whether he's going to move upstairs in the summer. I think we might end up with 18 months of Ralph, personally speaking. I could be wrong. I think knowing that there's an opportunity to have Ralph for a little longer gives him a couple of cards there, you know, a couple of aces up his sleeve. I think the director of football role, moving upstairs like that will suit him a lot better, I think, at United. And I think having him above somebody in a structure could work very, very well for us. But I believe that person has to be the right person, you know, and I don't think there's enough of those around. But back to your question, which is he stripping this back? Possibly. But I think, and when I watched Luke Shaw's interview the other night afterwards, and, you know, he put across a little quote towards the end where he talked about the manager, and where he said maybe the manager will have a little more time to figure out what he wants us to do and some other tactics. And I kind of thought, well, that's a jab at Ralph straight away. Now, maybe Shaw has a slight axe to grind with Ralph, because obviously Ralph made comments about Shaw a couple of years ago, you know, that if he had come into United, the first thing he would do is take Shaw out of the team. He'd have to buy a left back because he didn't really rate Shaw. Now, all of a sudden, you end up in charge of United. This is coming back to bite you on the arse. So maybe
and he also seems to have been favouring Alex Telles as well.
Well, he seemed to have favoured Telles in the first couple of weeks, but I think Shaw's played the last couple of games. And in fairness to Shaw, he hasn't been bad. You know, again, do I look at Shaw and think he knows exactly what his job is in that United team? No. But I don't look at very many in there and think they know what their jobs are. I think De Gea knows what his job is. I think the two centre-backs that played the other night knew what their job was, but I think as you get further up the pitch, that's where the kind of water got a bit muddier.
I suppose the problem is knowing your job is one thing, but knowing your job in different parts of the pitch is another thing. And this is maybe their problem. I mean, I don't think for a minute that most of those Man United players don't know their job. I think what happens is their job might be in a different location on the pitch and they don't know this job.
Well, like, I don't know about that. Like, I think when you make changes, like tactical changes, like he's trying to make, I think there is a period of adaptation where somebody's got to understand, I know this is the run you've made for the last so many years. This is now the run I don't want you to make. Instinct is going to bring you back to that run until you check yourself enough times and you go, because I would see this again in my own world where, people are making the same mistakes over and over again until they can start, turning the screw a little bit and getting it to turn the other way. And all of a sudden, then they do it right the first time. And when you can see, and this is where Ralph is really looking for something. Like, he went out and the boys went out against Burnley and played a better game against Burnley than we did against Wolves, albeit against a weaker team. But they played a better style of football. Now, I would imagine he thought going out against Wolves, they would be a step further than they were against Burnley. But they weren't. They regressed. They didn't go out and put in the same kind of performance. If they'd put in a similar performance against Wolves, they would have gotten something. But they didn't. They weren't as good as they were with Burnley. And that's where maybe the messages that's, for me, would be a scenario where I'm not putting the message across enough, or they're not getting it. So either I need to say it a different way, because when you do something and you do something well and it works for you, what do?
Yeah.
You do it again.
Yeah, you do it again. But the only thing I'd say about that is in a league like the Bundesliga, you'll get away with that because 9 times out of 10 each week, you're playing teams kind of a similar level with a similar formation. I think when you go into the Premier League, when you go out and you play the likes of Burnley and you play the way you played against them, that may not necessarily work against Wolves, who are quite strong and will bully you in midfield and do all those kind of things. So maybe it's a lack of his experience in the Premier League that, like, you're not just going out and playing Schalke and Union Berlin and 18.
And I mean, he did. So, I mean, what lends itself to that is the fact that at half time, he changed formation. We went to 3 at the back with 5 in midfield. He tried to get more width in the team. The second half, we were a better team. We created opportunities. We got higher up the pitch. Everything worked better for us in the second half. So there is part of that. Maybe he underestimated Wolves a little bit. Maybe he thought he was going in against a team that he could be below par and still get something out of it, like you said. But knowing the Premier League now and knowing, the way the league is, we barely got a win in Norwich. We got a scrappy draw at Newcastle, probably undeservedly, and now we've got beaten by Wolves. So all of a sudden, this guy has got to go, well, shit, this isn't what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, well,
because I thought I could rock up with these guys and these tactics and this would all. So now maybe there's going to be a period where he goes, you know what, I've got to change that again. Because there was a sign of they spoke to him after the game about the press and stuff like that. And the guy was like, there wasn't a whole lot of press. And he went, no, we didn't get an opportunity to press. I don't think you get opportunities to press. Either press, you don't. If you're waiting on an opportunity to press, you might be left waiting. Liverpool don't wait for an opportunity to press. They press. And when they press, they press as a team.
It's ingrained in them. And they press as a unit. But I don't think United, and correct me if I'm wrong, first of all, I'd always say to people on the show, I don't believe there's any easy games in the Premier League. I just think some games are easier than others. But I don't think there's any easy games anymore. Those days are gone because all these teams, if you're in the Premier League, and I know there's obviously teams that go down and teams that make top 6 and all that kind of thing, but there's all these teams on any day are capable of beating each other. There's no doubt about it, depending on how they show, because they all have high level quality coaching. They all have sports science. They all have fabulous academies. It doesn't matter whether you're at the top in your Man City or you're at the bottom in your Norwich. You go and look at Norwich's training facilities and stuff like that. They're A1. They're top notch.
Absolutely.
So like you're
Absolutely.
not going to get away. You're not slapping up some team that's at the bottom of the Bundesliga or something like that. It's a different world.
No,
And I suppose from the fan base, are they going to have to accept that one, there's an adjustment in the team, but two, it's going to take an adjustment for him as well to understand what he has taken on?
yes, and there's got to be an adjustment from the fans where the level of expectation has to be lowered for the meantime. Now, as fans, that's very, very difficult because we've been spoiled. I'm 37 years of age. Yeah. For the last 7 years, we've been starved of, prolonged success, let's say. But for the previous, say, 25 years of my life, we were English football. Yeah. We dominated. If we lost the league title, we won it the next year. Yeah. Because he made those changes and we were able to do that. We were challenging for Europe. We were in the semi-finals of the European Cup every year nearly. It was almost a given that we would get that far. And then it was about beating, the Bayerns, the Barças, the Milans and Juventus and stuff like that. So as from a fan base point of view, we've got to also go, you know what? We have a level of expectation based on previous success. That level of expectation has to come down, and you've got to start appreciating different things as a fan. You've got to start appreciating seeing the team evolve and seeing, groups of younger players come through and seeing a style rather than it being about, winning the trophy. Yeah. Because if all you ever focus on is winning that trophy, things don't evolve because your sole focus is on, did I win or didn't I win? And that's where I think football fans in general fall down.
Well, you're talking about like 7 years. I'm a Liverpool fan. I was 30 years in the wilderness. Yes. I spent 30 years to get back to the Grail. You know what I mean? Now, I know on the way, I know we had League Cups and FA Cups, and I know that we won
Champions
the Champions
Leagues
League,
and stuff. Absolutely,
all that kind of stuff. But the league is the Grail, really.
Of course,
it's the definition of how you've played as a team over a prolonged period. And I just think for United fans, I think there's a kind of a self-serving impatience about them, where it's like they want this instant glorification and gratification that it's like as if they're trying to prove a point.
Well,
and the problem is that United doesn't exist anymore. That United you can be on tours in the museum at Old Trafford or whatever it is.
Absolutely.
And I did it for years at Liverpool as well.
I would argue when Liverpool started to go into their barren spell, they went from being the biggest club in the world as well. Do you know what I mean? So again, for Liverpool fans, the expectation was, well, we've been winning these trophies for how many years now? This is what we do. We're the biggest football club in the world, and they were at one stage. You know what I mean? That's factual, that's factual. We can't argue with that. And there's been clubs, there's been Barças, ACs, Reals that have gone through periods of legacies and dynasties where they've built this as a club and as a team, but that's not sustainable. City are going through it at the minute, but you can absolutely bet something will change at City someday. And when it does, be it the owners decide, you know what, we're out of here. Be it Guardiola saying, I'm out of here. And then they've got to go through a roll of managers, and then they've got to throw money at it. Yeah. City fans will understand what it's like. Now, listen, we know City fans understand anyway because they've been in League One. They were in playoff finals and stuff like that. But
everything comes in cycles.
Everything comes in cycles. The cycle we're going through at the minute as United fans, it's a downward cycle. It's not a cycle that fans can necessarily enjoy. For me, and I tell, I have a 14-year-old and I have a 6-year-old, and they're two United fans. And I keep saying to them, lads, these are the bad days, but it's days like this that are going to make the winning
days sweeter.
So much sweeter.
Said it to Ben all the time.
So much sweeter, because like I brought my two lads to the Liverpool game a few weeks ago. We got absolutely butchered 5-0. The elder lad, he was like, will we get out of here? And I was like, well, if you're going on your own. He's like, well, what do you mean? He said, like, loads of people are leaving. I said, I don't give a shit about the lads that are leaving.
That's not what we do.
That's not what we do. We sit here, and if they keep putting balls in the net, we sit here, and that's what, because it says, I'm not walking out here after 65, 70 minutes, so we can get home early or whatever. We've put this in to get here. And I said, like, when we're here and they're lifting a European trophy, or when we're here and they're lifting a Premier League trophy, we'll think back to today. And we'll say, do you remember the day Liverpool slapped us up and we wanted to leave after 65 minutes and we didn't, because we're fucking real Reds, right? Yeah. This is, you know what I mean? And you have to have that about you. And it's difficult for, obviously, the young lads, because now, like anything, life is made easier for them. Everything's about, let's make it easier. You're having a bad day today. Go on, you can walk out. You leave. It's grand,
I suppose because they haven't experienced the full platter of the history that we would have experienced as well. It's banter FC for them all the time in school and stuff like that and all, Oh, you're a Man United fan, so you go in on a Monday and you go, oh, you got slapped up by Wolves and they're getting stick all the time. And it's hard to take. And I took it for years. I mean, I worked in a company all through the 90s and I was surrounded by United fans. And the guff I got.
Persecuted.
I remember the double.
Yeah.
The guff I got, man.
94, 95.
Non-stop, man. Non-stop. And we were at the tail end of that. I remember that Cantona goal. Like it was yesterday.
I remember those really bad suits you has on, but we'll go buy that anyway.
They'd be cool though today.
Do you reckon? I'm not so fucking sure.
I don't know. I think if you have a Saudi owner and you're going around with nice white linens, the Armani and all, you might look all right. You know what I mean?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's, it's very, very tough. But like, and again, there's another argument, and we've talked about it before. There's this argument of the owners aren't doing enough. Can't really throw the owners under the bus from a financial point of view for my money, Has anyone else spent more than United in the 8 years since Fergie left?
I wouldn't have thought so.
I wouldn't have thought so either. And then you're saying that, those Glazers, they take money out of the club. They don't invest in the club and stuff like that. You're going, well, they've certainly invested in the playing staff. Look at the squad we have. Look at how many players we've invested huge money in. Look at how many players we've got that have come through the youth system, where we've invested money into Carrington, where we've invested money into coaches and stuff like that. There's been a massive investment at United. Things haven't worked out for one reason or another. Timing in this game is everything. The stars do need to align. That's why, and that's, as a Liverpool fan, you'll understand that. There was times maybe when managers were doing something at Liverpool and the ball was moving the right direction, you think, go and back him. He wasn't back. Things went a different direction, and all of a sudden he's gone out the door and you're on to your next manager. That's happened at United. We've seen that. We've seen Jose ask for a centre-back. We've seen him say, listen, I need a centre-back, but get me a centre-back and I'll get you closer to it. There was no money found.
And I want Pogba gone.
And I want Pogba gone.
And
they didn't back him. And all of a sudden now, what's happening? Everyone wants Pogba gone, and we needed a new centre-back. We've spent big money on 2 centre-backs since Jose. We spent, 80 million on Harry Maguire and, 35 to 40 on Rafael Varane.
So that when you talk about that situation there, there's one thing that people talk about the owners, and there's a lot of theories out there. One of them is that, they go along and it's the modus, and then it collapses. And obviously with United being publicly quoted, the share price collapses. And then the talk is that the owners come in and they hoover up the shares, and then they make a couple of marquee appointments, either at managerial level or a player level. Does this sort of momentum happens where people are talking about, oh, United, we're back, it's gung-ho, get the jerseys, sign it up, the Ronaldo effect, whatever it is, share price shoots through the roof. Next thing, they cash in. And that kind of theory, and I know it's a kind of a, tinfoil theory out there and stuff like that, but it seems to be a number of occasions where it's the way that they have made nice money. So sometimes you wonder, in terms of the owners, is there a kind of a pattern there of like, let's ride this crest of a wave and get the second or third or Champions League or whatever it is. Boom, ass falls out of it, ass falls out of the share price, move in, hoover up, bring in Ronaldo, assign a new manager like a Jose or whatever it is, share price comes up, cash in, make a nice few quid. You know what I mean? And I'm not begrudging businessmen on making money. That's their job. Their job is to make money. Otherwise, they're not a charity. Man United is not a charity. It's a business. No. Let's be clear about
And let's be honest, they've invested enough of their money and enough of the money that's leveraged against their debt in the club, you know, to warrant making money from it. Of course, fans are going to have their say and say they make too much money. But again, we've spoken about percentages and stuff like that. And you're a businessman, I'm a businessman. Like, for the the levels are completely different. We're not getting this wrong. But from a percentage point of view of what we're talking about here and of what they're taking out of United, it's minuscule. It really is.
I don't think as a fan you can turn around. I don't think fans are in a position to turn around and say that businessmen are taking too much money out of it when players are getting paid 200, 300, 400 grand a week.
But you see,
you know what I mean?
See, here's the problem. Those businessmen aren't on the pitch every week scoring goals or assisting or having clean sheets. So there's nothing tangible for the fan to grab onto and say, you know, oh, well, he did a great job doing this, or he did a great job doing that. You know, and we've got that hero worship going on with players. You know, we walk around as football fans with other people's names on our backs. You know,
I suppose
based on the fact that
I suppose the tangible side of it for me is we've seen a lot of very big clubs become nobodies over no time at all. I mean, look at Leeds and what happened to Leeds, and they fell away, and look at how long it took them to come back up into the Premier League. You look at big clubs from years ago, the likes of the Ipswiches and the Charltons and the Nottingham Forests and the Derbys and all these other Middlesbroughs and all these other clubs who, okay, they're in the Championship now, and we know how difficult the Championship is. But United are still kind of at the top end, I would say. You know what I mean? And I you know,
they are at the top end. Yeah. Absolutely, they are. But, and again, this goes back to the level of expectancy from fans' point of views. You know, the expectancy for United fans isn't to be in the mix for top four. Like, United fans believe top four should be a guarantee every season, and then you should be, you know, pushing for a trophy in the league, an FA Cup, a Champions League. That doesn't happen all the time. And that's why you look at the likes of a Liverpool or a City now, or a Bayern. You know, it's different for Bayern in the league they're in Germany, where, you know, even in bad seasons, they're going to probably walk away with the league title. But I mean, those Bayern teams are still winning European Cups. You know what I mean? They might not win it as often as they'd like,
but they're around it.
They're around it. They're constantly around it. You know what I mean? There's only one team can win a European Cup every year. Now, if you look at the plethora of clubs around Europe that have money, history, tradition, players, management, all of that, like, there's going to be 11 or 12 really upset set of fans. You know what I mean? Like, if we're looking at Chelsea, United, City, Liverpool, the two Milan clubs, Barca, Real, Atletico, PSG, Juventus, like, there's 10 or 11 clubs, the Super League clubs, let's say. Only one team can win that European Cup.
But what fans forget as well, especially United fans, I think what they forget as well is there has been a dramatic drop-off in the traditional Big 12, if you like. Let's call it the Big 12, if you like, across Europe. Like, if you look at the Big 12, okay, we've had the emergence of PSG, and obviously that's very much financially driven. They just hoover up the best. They assemble them. Pochettino's really just there as a make weight, to be honest. I mean, he just stands there just to fill the numbers, because that team basically picks itself, or else Messi picks it. Let's be honest about it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But then outside of that, then we've seen a fall off kind of from Real Madrid. I know they've been so successful in previous years and stuff like that, but a massive fall off from where they were. Barcelona, we've seen a massive collapse. As you said, Bayern, because they're operating in the Bundesliga, that they're able to pick from the Bundesliga and take the best players as well, and they have it really to themselves, so they can maintain and be strong. Although they're very strong in Europe as well.
Bayern now are doing exactly what United did in the 90s. When you talk about recruitment and from transfer, United in the 90s looked at what position do we need to fill. Oh, I need to fill this position. Who's the best in that position other than what we have at our club? Oh, it's your man down the road. Well, we'll go down the road, be it Blackburn, be it Arsenal, be it, Spurs, West Ham, Chelsea, and we'll take whoever the best is there. And that's how we'll dominate, because financially we were on a different planet than most of the other clubs at that stage. Like, we were able to go in and get an Andy Cole, who was the best player in that league outside of United at that stage. We took him from our rivals. We took him. I remember seeing Kevin Keegan stand on the steps and having those supporters standing and argue with him, telling him he wasn't a man for the job now because he just sold their prize asset to. But that's what United had. He wanted to get 7 million in Keith Gillespie, and he thought, I've gotten a great deal out of this. I'm not quite sure you did, Kev, but that's what United were able to do. They did the very same thing with Dwight York when Aston Villa started to be a danger, a threat. Let's take the best player you have. It's so much harder now in the Premier League to do that, because the finances that are available to those bigger clubs, City, Chelsea, Liverpool. You even see Spurs were able to turn around and tell Man City this season, no, you can't have Harry Kane. We're keeping him. You haven't given us enough pieces of silver, and City had to then either do without or go elsewhere. We know now they did without, but they obviously brought Jack Grealish in and stuff. But Bayern don't have that resistance from other teams at the minute. Bayern are still financially head and shoulders above a lot of the clubs in Germany. So they go, oh, you know what? Oh, we'll have X, we'll have Y. I still think there's an argument to be made for Bayern really being in the mix for Haaland. I know we talk about, the fees that are being spoken about and stuff like that. Haaland's already playing in Germany. He knows what life is like in Germany. He knows he can compete for major honours at Bayern Munich. He's going to win that league title every year. He's probably going to win the Poker Cup every year. And him being at Bayern gives them a really good chance of winning a Champions League every year. I think a lot of fans believe Haaland will end up in the Premier League. I'm not 100% sure. I wouldn't be surprised to see him at Bayern, I have to say, because they've been able to take Dortmund's best players for the last how long? 15 years? 10 to 15? Easily. Every time Bayern have a really big player, he ends up down the road in Munich. And that's a big thing for them in Germany, to be able to do that and keep themselves then relevant on a European scene. United can't now do that. We can't go to, we can't go down the road to Liverpool and go, that guy Fabinho, that really good defensive midfielder, here you go, that can play at centre back as well. We'll have him, because Liverpool will go, on your bike, lads, not a chance.
Who you actually tried to sign? You tried to sign him and we whipped him. and you can, so that leaves you, then you can't go to City. Then you can't go to Chelsea, because most of those players are all spoken for, right? Well, you see, there's been a massive levelling out in the financials in the Premier League as well. Like, we know United is one of the richest clubs in the world and stuff like that and all that, but we know now that where you had stolen a march on so many clubs in terms of the business and the advertising and the sponsorship and the branding and all that kind of stuff, now all these teams have caught up. And there's only so much you can do at a club in terms of your platter of financial revenues coming in. Obviously, they delve into social media and everything now, and they've got revenue streams coming from everything and stuff like that, But all the teams are doing it. It's not like United are over here operating in a different financial base, like it was in the 90s and stuff like that, where most clubs, Arsenal was probably the closest to them, but most clubs back then were operating like football clubs. And business was a kind of an afterthought nearly. But United put business to the forefront between sponsorship, advertising, branding, all these kind of things. And they had such riches of finances, they could turn around and go in and say, listen, we can give you this. Plus, you were so successful as well. Who doesn't want to move to a successful team?
Absolutely. Exactly. And now things, now life's not like that at United, and if we look at, down the years, when as Fergie left and Moyes came in and stuff like that, we started to have issues, around recruitment. We know he went out and he tried to get Gareth Bale and Cesc Fabregas. He spoke about that himself. Bale went to Madrid and Cesc, went to Barca and stuff like that, and then didn't want to leave and was going to fight for his place in the team. And what did we end up with? Juan Mata and Marouane Fellaini. Now, there's no comparison there.
Which is the beginnings, and this is part of when I talk about Liverpool through the 90s and stuff like that. We were always settling for the third or the fourth choice. we never really got our first choices normally. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And that's why we were always, you know, 2 levels down at times and stuff like that. When you look at United and you looked at us and stuff like that,
If
it was
you
that settling of that rather than going, right, we have a plan. This is what we need.
now, don't forget, we also now, because of the age we live in with technology, and you know, the kids are all playing FIFA and stuff like this. So we know an awful lot more about a lot more players than we've ever known. But I mean, there was times when Liverpool, who were one of our biggest rivals, you know, in the 90s, were signing players, and you were going, who? And they were coming in and playing in the team, right? Yeah. And you'd think, Jesus, now as good as he might be or whatever, he's just a little bit less than rolling that 6 on the dice. You know what I mean? He's a 4. And if you have 4 or 5 of those in your team, you're not winning league titles. You know, you're not, because you can't afford to carry like that with you. And this is now what's happening at United.
Yeah.
When we're making signings and we're looking at, you know, oh, we need X, you know, I feel like at times the recruitment at United, I know it's been spoken about before, as in who is in charge of that recruitment. Is it Woodward? Is it Arnold? Is it Murta? You know, what's our scouting system like? What's our network like? We throw money at problems at United. We're not necessarily trying to solve problems. I mean, if you look at our team at the minute, okay, you're an outsider, so to speak. You're a Liverpool fan. You're a neutral. I'm going to give you 3 players, yeah, to make us a better team and to get us into the mix, yeah. So first of all, what 3 positions are you going to pick?
Well, first of all, before I even do that, I'm going to figure out, well, how do I want to play? And what's the formation?
Okay.
Am I going to play 4-3-3? Am I going to play other formations? And if I'm going to go with the 4-2-2-2, that's a very different style then of purchase and player and stuff like that. And I think that's what's happened in terms of United. I think what happens is, you know, you buy in Jadon Sancho because Jadon Sancho was flavour of the month in the Bundesliga and he's an outstanding player and stuff like that.
Okay.
You drop him in there and you go, what's he doing in there? Here's a guy playing out on the left when he's always been playing on the right, like, or whatever it is. So why are we doing that? You know, you have Greenwood who's coming through, who's an exceptional talent and should be a world-class player, but he's absolutely banjoed and stymied. He's like that horse trying to run the Grand National who's never jumped the fence. And you're trying to figure out where to put him and stuff like that. And you're there going, but this is where he should be played. He should be played in this position because we know how clinical he is in front of goal and all that. But sure, we'll put him out on the wing. And it just all this decision making beggars belief. But I think the problem stems from the recruitment is one thing, but it's actually understanding what formation you want to play. What do people play in the world now? What's world class? What suits? Now, I know you have to tweak it for different
No, but you're right. You're right.
But you have to look at it.
And I've spoken to you about this on the mashup and on other programs before. Bayern buy players to suit their system, not to suit their manager. So they know if in 6 months somebody leaves the building, the next guy in can use a very similar system with a very similar set of players. You know what I mean? Yeah. Rather than me bringing in a Jose, who's a park the bus kind of guy, rather than me bringing in a Louis van Gaal, who's a possession-based coach, rather than me bringing in, you know, David Moyes, again, a defensive coach at Everton. Everton's whole game was built on clean sheets. They weren't going out and playing attacking football week to week, right? So you need to understand, first of all, what style you want. If you want to play attacking football, you need attacking players, but you also need defenders that can defend based on the fact that they're going to play in an attacking setup and what you want from them. So you want fullbacks that can get up and down the line. You want, you know, a holding midfielder that's going to sit in front of that back four and not move, because that's his job, and his job isn't to get involved in that attacking football. But you have to have an idealism of what you want it to be, and we don't have that. And that's where I suppose me talking about Ralph going upstairs gives us an opportunity for something like that, where maybe it comes from above and maybe we put that stepping stone in place and we go, okay, well, this is what we're going to try and do. And then somebody comes in and they need him, a manager.
And assuming
then
you don't have that disjointment again, because that's what's been there, you know, because if you look, I mean, Solskjaer was there for what, 3 years?
Yeah,
and if you
2.5
2.5, 3 years, whatever it was, if you think of that time that he's there and you think about how he left basically with United not having a system, not having a pattern of play, not understanding where players should sit and all that kind of stuff. And you're there looking at that, it's bewildering. And I don't necessarily want to harp on Solskjaer either, you know.
No.
He came in and he had a very difficult job to do for a guy
and don't
who
forget,
had very little experience as well. Like,
exactly. And don't forget, he did a much better job than a lot of the guys that came before him, who had a lot more credentials and had been furnished with a lot more money as well. So, you know,
but you're also looking at the club as well in terms of their connection with Solskjaer and with Fergie's connection with Solskjaer. They were very generous to him in terms of time because he should have gone a number of times.
But that's where Fergie has his finger in the pie, and that's where things aren't going to hold up, because if one of Fergie's favourites goes in, he gets more time than if it's someone else's. You know what I mean? He needs to, you know, take himself out of the situation. And when somebody makes the call, say, you know what, I'm not comfortable.
Being an advisor should just be that. Just an advisor.
Rather than being day to day.
Not the guy who's rubber stamping.
You know, we've talked about him going in and having conversations with players while the manager's there. Now, he's been brought in by the manager. The fact you're caught, like, if I was going to a row down the road with one of the lads because he'd been giving me a bit of grief, I wouldn't call me old man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Come down here with me just in case he gets a bit lippy. And you can dig me out of a hole.
You say there was Solskjaer talking about not wanting to park in his parking space and all that kind of thing. You know, all that kind of malarkey that went on. But I just think one thing I look at with United as well. I mean, as you said before, there's no lack of talent there. There's a kind of a lack of how we want to play, the direction, the management of the talent, as opposed to the actual talent itself. Now, obviously, you look at the game the other night and you go, these lads are throwing in the fucking towel big time. But there's obviously a level of frustration there as well, you know.
I didn't believe. Now, I have to say, when I looked at it, I didn't believe they threw the towel in, to be honest with you. What I did believe, though, and I do believe, and I said it earlier on, the message didn't get across. It looked like guys that didn't know what their job was. If you look uncomfortable doing something, you're not going to do it to the best of your ability. These guys didn't look like they absolutely knew what this guy wanted. They kind of looked around to say, do you know what you're doing? Do you? Well, I haven't. No, I'm not.
Well, you see, the problem is when you look at the big teams and the way they play now and when they're playing beautiful football, like when you look at City on their pomp, it just looks so natural.
It does, but it didn't look like that initially either.
No. So there is he had to do his work as well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there is the betting in time. But for me, you know, there's got to be a little bit of time, and he's got to be given time to get his players in, or the players for the system. You know, again, I believe the kids in the under 23s should be playing a similar style to the first team. Because then if you take a player from the under 23s,
you have that synergy.
They do the same job, but in a different team. Whereas what I don't want them to do is, and again, with the under 23s, nothing should be about winning a game of football.
Yeah.
You know, if we get beaten every single week, but the players get better, I've done my job. Now, the problem with football is nobody will look and say, you know, you're doing a good job when they're losing. But that's not always the case. If your end goal is only winning, you know, everything less than a win is failure.
To a point, I suppose. You look at David De Gea at the moment. David De Gea at the moment is outstanding and he's not winning.
Yeah, and that's from an individual point of view.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying to you is when I'm talking to people about football or about tennis or whatever it is, there's got to be a period where you adapt to what you're doing differently, you know, and that's what United need to do. But you've got to put yourself into it and say, I'm going to do this. And this is a very difficult thing to do. And you're going to say, I'm going to do this regardless of winning or losing. You know, you've seen boxers go into a ring and they had a game plan until they got punched in the head.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it went out the window. Now, it's very easy for a team when something's not going well to go, we'll go back to something we've done previously that maybe, we were better at. But that's not maybe evolving as a team. That's just going back to the status quo. To evolve it, you do need to at times take a couple of steps backwards to take steps forward.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see at the minute. But as I said to you earlier, I also want to see our under 23s playing the same style, the same formation. If we play 4-3-3 as a first team, those under 23s should be playing 4-3-3. What that right winger on that team should be able to come into ours, and that's all. But that doesn't happen. Because the coach, to cut off, because the coach of the under 23s is looking from his job's point of view, and he's going, well, my job's to win games. Well, no, actually, it's not really, because I don't think anyone's going to go and celebrate winning under 23s trophy or a Premier League B trophy. Who gives a toss?
Yeah, your job is to find a balance between success and being a feeder to the seniors.
Well, you see, even success for me there, it's a pointless exercise, because if I'm being a feeder for the first team,
but it builds confidence as well. Like if you're an under 23s and you're going out and you're getting slapped up every week, you might have a couple of players there that are world class, but they're going to look very average if they're getting slapped up.
Yeah, but the onus can't be on that. You see, that's like putting the cart before the horse. The onus has got to be on doing things a certain way. Success will come after you've done things a certain way. But if your onus is on success solely, it's not going to happen. And that's where we need to change things. You know what I mean? Like Anthony Alanga has come in from that under 23 side. Ralph has obviously decided, I've seen something in this kid. He's an under 21 Swedish international. He's got stuff about him. I want to involve him. He's involved him in the first team, and now he's asked him to play a different role than he played in the 23s. You now don't have the same player.
So it's like starting again.
So he has to go through that. You know what I mean? That's not going to work.
He's also got a conundrum as well. A couple of points I'd like to put you. One is you've got a front line that's 70 years of age combined. It's very hard to change those boys and educate them to a new way of playing, because we know what Ronaldo gives you. That's not going to change. We know what Cavani gives you, and that's not going to change. But what I'd also say to you as well is it must be very demoralizing if you're a player there and you come into the side and you put on a performance and you think you've nailed down a position and then you're dropped. And I find a lot of times at United, when I look at the team sheet that goes out, guys are being rewarded kind of for failure with their positions and stuff like that. Like if a guy goes out and has a bad game, under Fergie, if a guy went out and had a bad game, okay, he'd either have a word with him to pump him up if it was kind of isolated, but if it was regular, if it was a regular poor performance, that guy would be whipped. And
he wouldn't play games.
He wouldn't play games.
He would get a small amount of game time to show had things changed.
Yeah.
And if they hadn't, he'd go, sorry, Billy X, Y, or Z, there's the door. You're not doing it. Out you go. We don't do that at United anymore.
Yeah.
Like, case in point, Donny van de Beek. I would say the best game I've seen him have for United so far was in the EFL Trophy. We lost 1-0 at home to West Ham. He was super. He was our man of the match on the night. We lost 1-0. So rather than Donny playing the next game and trying to build on what he done, they pulled the plug.
And then it's nearly pinned on him.
And it's oh well, you went in. Now don't forget, when he went into playing the EFL against West Ham, he also wasn't playing with the Pogbas, the Brunos, the Ronaldos, the Cavanis. He was left alongside the lesser lights to try and show something. He showed it. Did he get rewarded?
No.
So Jesse Lingard come on against, again, West Ham, away from home, the league, dug us out of a hole, got us the winner. Yeah. Where is he next week?
Whipped.
Buried.
And this is the thing that I'm saying is, like, as a manager, your job is always to put out your best team, isn't it? That's your job. Your job is to, manage the squad and manage players through tough times, potentially, and stuff like that. But you have to play your best 11. And your best 11 has to be what you see in front of your eyes, both in training and both in performance. And I just think a number of times at United, I think it's, look, I don't know whether it's the difficulty of sponsorship in the background or whatever this is or something like that. But how many times have we turned around and said this season, Ronaldo should be dropped, or Maguire should be dropped.
Look at
whoever it is should be dropped.
Before you mention anyone else, let's mention the two boys. It's very easy to make people scapegoats or say this or that. We've put ourselves in a position with Harry Maguire where we can't drop him because he cost 80 million. Right? We can't drop him. Now, based on the performance the other night, again, it's Wolves. But if Maguire's ready the next day and he goes in ahead of Jones and Varane, we've taken a step backwards because we know the two boys were excellent the other night. So they should
and the price should never come into it. So it shouldn't matter what the tag is.
Shouldn't matter.
Yeah.
If they were the two best centre backs available to us on the night, and we've seen the performance that was put out there, they play. If that means our £80 million captain sits on the bench, he sits on the bench. He might get an opportunity when someone's injured. When he gets an opportunity, he might decide to get his finger out of his hole and go, I now need to play for this spot. Rather than him saying, I can go out for 2 weeks with COVID, I can pull a hammy, I can go and dick Ralph's daughter, but I'm still getting a spot because I'm Harry Maguire, I'm captain, and they paid 80 million for me. Now, the transfer fee, by the way, isn't down to him, but it is leveraging on his side because who's going to say, I'm going to be the man to take out an £80 million signing? Because if it doesn't go your way, what happens? Well, we spent 80 million on a centre-back and you put him on the bench. But he hasn't been the best centre-back in the club this season. He hasn't been, I would say I could probably name one centre-back at every club below United who have been better than Maguire this season. One centre-back at every other club. And that's even clubs in really poor positions. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking about clubs that are down the bottom of the league. Like,
yeah, I know what you mean. Players who were beaten 3-0 that should have been beaten 7-0 because they stopped 4 other opportunities.
Because you know what I mean?
Yeah. Kind of like the David De Gea effect. He's outstanding, but still getting beaten.
But still getting tonked, And again, we've got the issue with Ronaldo now. Ronaldo was a massive rod for us as a club. Massive. We bought that rod for our own back.
Yeah.
And commercially, as you said earlier about the Glazers, 15 million for Ronaldo is the best money they've invested in a long time.
Yeah.
You could bet your bottom dollar. I know myself, I'm a season ticket holder. If you're not using your season ticket and somebody else would like to use it, you can give it to your family and stuff like that. There may not have been a big uptake in people wanting to go. Well, Ronaldo signed and all of a sudden I start getting phone calls and knocks on the door.
Everyone wants to go.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got that. Do you then take that out? Who's going to be the guy? Who's going to be the guy that says, you know what? I'm going to take Ronaldo and I'm going to take Harry Maguire. I'm going to sit them both out. And the reason I'm going to sit them both out is I have two guys that go in there. Let's say it's Mason Greenwood up front. Let's say it's Phil Jones at the back. I have two guys that are going to go in there and do a better job for the team in this system. Well, here's your problem. Most guys haven't got the balls to do that because if things don't go their way, they're not strong enough to stand up and go, I'm right. I'm doing the right thing. I'm not going to buckle under that pressure. And the pressure above's not going to get on top of them. You know what I mean? You've got to be a special kind of cunt to turn around and go, this is how it's going to roll.
And you're also,
what I mean?
Trying to find the cancer of a locker room revolt.
Do you know what I mean? Because, well, I don't want to play because my mate's sitting on the bench. Bruno looks like he's already taken his ball home. Look at the damage bringing Ronaldo in has done to Bruno.
It's amazing, the Ronaldo situation. I called it back in August and I was vilified over it by United fans who turned around to me and told me I was absolutely talking pony. And I called it and I said, be careful what you wish for because you may have a major problem there. And my problem was not necessarily Ronaldo. I mean, the commercial side of it speaks for itself. Yeah. What it was I was looking at Ronaldo coming in, one of the greatest ever kicked the ball, if not the greatest. Okay. And he was being managed by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. And I said, that is never going to work.
Yeah, but here's the other problem. And this is where I would really have the problem. My problem wasn't necessarily with Solskjaer. My problem would be with those fans. Because from a fan's point of view, they remember the guy that left United 10 years previous, right? They expected to get the same guy back. He's now 10 years older.
Yeah.
Madrid didn't get rid of him and send him to Italy because he was getting better.
Yeah.
They sent him there because they could see he was on the decline.
And
now
Juve let him go for 15 as well.
And Juve, so all of a sudden there's a pattern appearing, right? You go, he's gone from there, and all of a sudden, boom, he lands back in Manchester. Fans think this guy is going to be running at guys, he's going to be doing this, he's going to be doing that. As much as he, does for the team, he's not the Ronaldo that was winning titles on his own at United. And that he did.
And it was also the last position on the pitch you needed to fill. So he was kind of like the Brucey bonus on top of what was there. But the problem is he became the cake and what was there became the cherry. And it was swapped roles and stuff like that. And that's where the real problem was.
Yeah, and it's just not going to work at United when that's how recruitment is done. What do you think as a Liverpool fan, Klopp would have sanctioned Ronaldo?
Not a chance. Not a chance. One, what he brings in terms of the baggage. Two, in terms of work rate. And three, and just upheaval and everything and all. It would have
been destabling for his team.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we didn't have anyone, i.e. a Solskjaer, that was able to turn around and say to the board, no, I don't want them. And it was,
funny enough, the conversation was had in June, and the club then said they didn't want them.
Well,
and then it was the reaction
what happened
to the City stuff.
You know what happened, right? Yeah. What happened was FOMO kicked in, the fear of missing out, and United thinking, well, if City want him, he must still be able to do it, right?
Do you know what I look back on that? I look back on that as well.
The problem with City is City had 10 positions on that pitch field. Ronaldo was the cherry, as you said.
Yeah.
At United, we hadn't got a cake to put a cherry on.
Although, well, is that a fair comment? Because when you think about United, okay, and I'll play, to excuse the plum, devil's advocate here, but if you hadn't assigned Ronaldo and you had assigned a world-class centre defensive midfielder, you'd be a very different team, wouldn't you?
That's my point. We weren't. Ronaldo is the cherry. We bought the cherry and our cake wasn't even out of the fucking oven.
But not in his eyes. In his eyes, he's the cake and everyone else is the cherry.
And that's, but at City had the cake. City were going to sprinkle a touch of Ronaldo here and there and add to what they were. When he comes into United, he is the big fish, and everybody around him goes, "Holy shit!" When he arrived, do you remember the pandering from the United players?
Oh yeah. Yeah, the walk arounds with Wes Brown and everything and all.
Do you think that happens at City?
No.
I think they go, it's just another fucking bloke.
Yeah.
He's got 2 legs and 2 arms like the rest of us.
Now you'd obviously get the Ronaldo sign on the welcome to Manchester, the Tevez stuff and all that kind of stuff. But I know what you mean in terms of the actual fanfare.
In terms of players coming out and we can't believe he's back, and did they think he was going to lift the club on his own? A guy who left the club, all those years ago, is now a completely different animal.
Do you reckon? Here's one for you, and it's again another tinfoil theory, if you like. Do you reckon City were really in for him, or do you reckon that was talk to get you guys to pull the trigger on the 45?
No, I think he would have played a great role at City. I really, really do.
No, I know where you're coming from that, but do you actually think Pep was in for him?
No, I do.
Legit in for him? Or do you think the talk of that happening triggered United to pull him in there?
Well, I mean, United did the exact same thing with Fred and Maguire.
Yeah.
City were in for Fred, United gazumped them. City were in for Maguire, United gazumped them. So is it a fact that we're scouting the same players as City? Or are we being reactionary to what our neighbours are doing down the road?
Well, I know City pulled out of the Maguire one once it lifted off 65 million.
When it got to 65, Pep went,
a
little bit too much.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Did they pay more than 65 for Ruben Diaz? I think they did.
I don't think
it's 65 to 70. It's close.
Yeah.
But they were happy enough to pull the trigger. Why? Because they were convinced. I don't think they were absolutely convinced about Maguire. I think there was, elements where
there was an element of greed there from Leicester as well. We have to allow for that as well.
Yeah, there was an element of he's ours. Because you've got to get him out of here.
They pulled out at 65. It's not like you got him for 67. You paid 80 for him.
We paid 80, absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's not like it was close.
Yeah, but that's still us looking at City going, what are they doing? Yeah. We'll react to it, Oh, and again, that's us throwing money at them. City, we know, have just as much money as us to play around with, right? Yeah. But they didn't say, we're going to gazump United and pay 85 or 90. Why not? Because Guardiola went, I have a ceiling, I have a cap, I have an idea what I want to spend. And he has a value. And if his value is 65 and someone wants 80, we don't buy him.
The way they do it as well is they tend to buy players in the 50 to 60 bracket. So they all kind of come in the same. So you don't get that superstar effect. I know they did it this year with Grealish with the 100 million, but the market, the English market generates that.
And well, it's also easier because it keeps a level of harmony in the dressing room when you're sitting there and the bloke beside you's on the same amount of money. As opposed to looking around the dressing room and go, well, I know that cunt's on 400 grand a week. Yeah. And he wouldn't lace my Nikes. So I want X, Y, or Z. Do you know? And that's happened at United over the years. And in recent years, more than ever.
So you as a United fan right now, let me put this to you then. What is your expectation for the rest of this season, realistically? And I don't mean in terms of trophies. I mean in terms of maybe a league position. I mean in terms of what you can do maybe in the January window, in terms of what they can do from a playing point of view.
I suppose for me, I'd be more than happy. It's easier said than done again. I'd be more than happy to write this season off at this stage. I think we've gone too far into the mire. I think we need to address the dressing room and the issues in the dressing room. I think we need to clear out an awful lot of the dead wood. We've a massive squad at United, massive. We've probably got 6 to 8 players that don't need to be there anymore. We need to cut the wage bill. There's some big earners at United, getting money for all rope basically.
So you're at another big rebuild again.
We're at another big rebuild, I would think. If I look at what's been bandied around, with incomings and stuff like that, it does look very different than has been in previous years. I can name 3 or 4 guys that they're looking at. So we know they're looking at the boy Julian Alvarez, 17 million. River Plate, scores goals, assists. He's a goal involvement every game and a half type thing. Really exciting, young, talented footballer. That's not Ronaldo, but that's what we need. If I look at in the middle of the park, we're going to lose Pogba. He's going to go. The boy, Boubacar Kamara at Marseille is going to leave on a free in the summer. So he can now start talking to clubs in England and stuff like that. I'm going to give everybody a tip. And here's a little tip from me to you. Go and have a look at this kid. He is fucking outrageous. He is outrageous. He plays in the French under-21 squad. He plays in the middle of the park for them. And he is absolutely unbelievable. And he's not unbelievable.
So he's going to have a number of teams talking to him.
So he's going to have a number of teams talking to him. There's the boy.
I suppose when you think about that, where's United then in the pecking order of that? Here's a guy who looks like on the face of it could go on to be a world-class midfielder.
Yes.
Okay. He's available on a free transfer. Yeah. Okay. So we know Barca's going to talk to him. We know Real's going to talk to him. We know potentially PSG are obviously going to talk to him because they're going to be watching him without a shadow.
Absolutely.
Okay.
They're playing him twice a season as well. So they're seeing him week to week and they're seeing him a couple of times a year and they're going, Jesus Christ, this kid's, So to some of those top clubs, this guy's not going to be a secret. They're going to have their finger on the pulse. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think, there's a lot of selling to be done here on a United point of view. There's going to be sales where you're selling this club to this kid that he's going to lift this club from where it is right now. And we're going to give him a platform to go from a talent to being one of the biggest footballers in the world. Now, undoubtedly, if this kid comes in and he's part of a rebuild that goes well at United, he puts himself in that bracket of one of the best players in the world in that position.
Yeah, it's kind of statue time.
It's, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there's that. You know, there's a lot of younger players, more exciting players, players that aren't necessarily, you know, your eye isn't always just drawn to straight away. It looks like with the names, again, this is only with the names being bandied about. We can only talk about what's, you know, I did think seeing Newcastle go in for Kieran Trippier, we know United had a massive interest in Kieran Trippier. Now, if you look at Newcastle going in at 12 million, what's to stop United going in at 15? And Trippier going, I'll go to United, thanks very much.
Yeah, because we know if United win, it'll be 20. But that's neither here nor there.
I mean,
if you want the player, you want the player.
Do you know what I mean? Plus, as far as I know, I think he's a United fan.
Yeah.
So this is easy. They're not getting involved at the minute. And I like that they're not getting involved, because the fact they're not getting involved is they're not fearing that missing out. And they're not going, well, if he goes there, what are we left with? They're going, we have our eye on someone else anyway. He's not what we're looking for. You know, and
you're hoping that's the case.
Well, it's got to be the case, you know. It's got to be the case.
But it hasn't been.
No, it hasn't been, and that's where I think Ralph is really going to earn his money. You know, I think Ralph's going to be a massive character in the Man United soap opera over the next couple of years.
You think in the mold of the way Michael Edwards was at Liverpool for Klopp, in terms of player recruitment and contracts and stuff like that.
Yeah, but also in the way that, you know, I'm in charge of this.
Yeah.
I'm in charge of this.
A total change to the scouting philosophy.
A total change to the scouting philosophy. You know, Ed, you're a great guy. John, you're a great guy. Richard, you're great guys. You're not scouts.
You have to leave this to me.
Go away. Let me do my job. I want a guy who's a little bit arrogant about it and goes, you know, you're good at marketing? Great. Fuck off and market. I pick footballers. I make footballers better. I'm going to buy stuff for the system. We're going to create a system. We're going to buy for the system. We're going to get the best out of the system and the players we put in it, rather than I'm going to buy, you know, I'm going to just keep bringing players in.
So my job is basically to bring the right players in for the system. Your job, guys, is to turn them into brands.
Well, not even your job is to make sure the money is there available for them based on what you've got out of the marketing and the merchandising departments. Do you know what I mean? When we get them to us,
money generally
is. And when we get them to a stage, and when, you know, if we get Kamara in, and if he looks like a baller, and if you want to, you know, if you want to have you know, the BK4, you know, that we have that, fine. Let's turn this kid into a superstar. Let's not just keep buying superstars, because that, you know, United wasn't built on that. You know, United was built on creating stars. Like, you remember yourself when Ferguson came in with that class of 92 and Alan Hansen, you'll win nothing with kids, you know. Well, Ferguson said, well, I think you might be wrong. That. We sold Kanchelskis, Mark Hughes, Paul Ince, all that summer. Deadwood, really good players, right? Kanchelskis went, I'm going to say he went to Fiorentina. Ince went to Inter, and Hughes, I think, went to Chelsea.
That's right. And
all went to big clubs, all went to clubs where to further their careers and stuff like that. They're all a step down Man United, you know? And he brought guys in because he went, if I hold on to these guys any longer, like you said about Greenwood, they stand in the guy's way.
Yeah.
And it comes a time where you have to say, there's the horse, or there's the grass, run.
Either you move the wall out of the way, or you're going to lose the talent that you want to keep. The likes of Greenwood's going to turn around eventually and go, I need out of here. You know?
And I mean, and the scary thing is, I mean, how good would a Greenwood be under a Pep Guardiola? I mean, if you gave,
or a Klopp, or a Tuchel,
of it,
or a Conte even.
I'll agree on the Klopp, but I'm not going any further than that.
I think Tuchel would be an exceptional coach for him as well.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't, listen, this isn't a play on Tuchel or on Conte. The two best managers in world football are Jurgen Klopp and Pep Guardiola. The two best styles of play in world football are Man City and Liverpool. Chelsea don't play the brand of football that Liverpool or City play. They might be a good team in their own right. They don't play the brand of football. PSG, when he had all that at his disposal, didn't play a brand of football where you went, holy shit, wow. You know? And when Klopp was at Dortmund, did you look at them and go, holy shit, wow? Yeah, you did. Whether they were winning or they were losing, because he had a style. You know? Anywhere Guardiola's been, Barca, Bayern, City, have you looked and gone, fucking hell, this is...
Style,
right? So you know, Klopp, and if I see Greenwood with a Klopp or a Guardiola, you know, the sky's the limit. So we need to make sure that we have somebody there that can say to Mason Greenwood, I can turn you into one of the biggest footballers in the world. Because that stops him from leaving Old Trafford. At the minute, I don't think we're selling that enough, because I don't believe we have something there to do that.
I'm thinking back, as you mentioned, that the disappointment in the kid walking off the other night after being taking the shin guards out. I thought he was so demoralised walking back, like, you know what I mean? Because he was arguably one of the best guys on the pitch. Like,
it was a head stagger for me, I've got to be honest. Like, and I listened to the interview afterwards, and you know, he talked about Ralph talked about it was either Eddie or Cristiano, and I went, well, why wasn't it Jadon Sancho? Because arguably, if they were both playing as the eights in the system, and he was having a much better game than Sancho was, Sancho stays on, and you play Bruno from the left, and you play Mason from the right, or you switch them. But like, there again, that's a basic decision that someone got wrong. And like, it's a very basic decision. If you watch that, if I implore anybody to go and watch the first 60 minutes of that game the other night, and if there's 100 people that watch it, 100 and fucking one of them will tell you Greenwood was having a better game than Sancho, and he pulled him off.
I think everyone was bewildered by the substitution.
You were like,
even neutrals.
Well, when you know yourself, if you're having a bad game, you're going to get hooked. You know, you might be pissed off, but you're pissed off with yourself because you're going, fucking hell, I gave this guy an opportunity to hook me. Greenwood the other night's looking around going, me? Are you sure to get that number wrong? Like, there's 3 or 4 boys around me that are having absolute stinkers, and you're pulling me.
Yeah.
You know?
The fans, even when he was walking back, were trying to pep him up when he was pulling the shin guards out, but he was like, his body language was horrific.
You know the last time I seen at Old Trafford, and it's a funny one. I was at the Bayern United game in the Champions League about 6 years ago. And Tony Kroos was still playing for Bayern. And the talk was he was leaving that summer. And United were big in the game for him. It was about 7 years ago, because it was towards the end of Moyes' first season, you know. We got hammered in the replay. We drew 1-1 at Old Trafford. Patrice Evra gave us the lead away from home in the Allianz. And then I think they beat us 4-1 on the night, or 5-1. But Kroos came off after about 60 minutes. And as he sat down, all the United fans patted him on the back. He was sitting at the dugout, and they patted him on the back, and he was like, come here in the summer, kid. Because he didn't look like a guy who was being appreciated maybe at Bayern, and he was on his way out. And he felt like, he said himself, he wasn't held in high regard at Bayern. And he went to Real Madrid, and look at the career the guy's had. As a United fan, we can't see this happen to Mason Greenwood. If Mason Greenwood goes, you know, to any clubs in England, any of the big clubs, the Liverpools, the Cities, anything like that, this is going to come back to bite us on the arse. Massively.
Yeah, he'll light it up.
Massive. He will fucking light it up.
I mean, there's no doubt in the last 3 years his progress as a player has been halted big time. Tell us this, okay? The Dazzler gets the job as director. You go in, you're looking at the 11 there at the moment. Let's do this as a reference point. You're sitting in the hot seat. Who goes? Is there any surprises?
Who goes?
Or is it obvious? If you're taking 4 or 5 players out, or 6 players out, whatever you think the rebuild is, and I know it doesn't necessarily all happen in one window.
No, well, I mean, absolute deadwood straight away. Mata goes.
Yeah. Who isn't playing? Who isn't
playing? So it's not a huge, you know.
But if you're looking, say the 11 the other night, If you're looking at that 11 the
Well,
other night
no,
and you're doing an assessment on
I'll go through a couple more, right? Because I think Matic goes for me.
Okay.
So Matic goes, he's a guy that's involved in the 11 week to week. If he's not starting, he's on the bench. And if he doesn't start, he usually comes on.
Okay.
Matic goes, give the spot to the kid Hannibal from the under 23s. Again, take a blocker out of a space, let the kid move into it, and let him play ball. He needs to play games so we understand how good this kid is. He's talked about as being one of the biggest talents in world football in that position. There's no use in playing with the under 23s. We need to see this and let the kid grow. He's going off to the AFCON now, I believe, with Tunisia, I think. So we may see some of that. And maybe if he puts it on the stage, maybe he comes back and someone goes, listen, he did this on a stage, we can bring him in. You know what I mean? I think, like for me, I take Ronaldo out all day long.
Yeah.
I take Ronaldo out. You know, I really, really do. I know it's a massive call. I think, you know, you try and sell it to him that things aren't working, that we're going in a different direction, that we're changing, you know, the emphasis, we're focusing on youth, we're focusing on excitement, exuberance, stuff like that. And I think you push him and say, listen, there's the LA Galaxy, off you go. You know, enjoy Hollywood, be a star, be in movies, you know, do what you want to do. But Ronaldo for me would go. I personally would keep Cavani. I think he's a great example around the club for some of the younger guys. I think he's still a good finisher. I think his work rate's phenomenal. I would keep Cavani, but I would let it be known that he was going to play a lesser role, so to speak. You know, he would be impact. He would be playing lesser games. You know, maybe when it's 1-1 against City in the 60th
which
minute,
is probably it's probably the most successful way United have used him in the past, actually.
So that's where I would go with Cavani. I'd be happy to keep, you know, from a winger point of view, I would be absolutely fine with Sancho, Rashford, Greenwood, and Elanga. There's 4 kids that can go out, and again, give them a bit of freedom, get them to be a little bit more direct. Let's get balls in the box, you know.
Yeah.
Bruno would play. Donny would play for me, you know, because ball retention has been massive for us, and the lack of ball retention, we don't hold on to the ball well enough. He's one of the best passers in the squad. You know, he keeps the ball moving at a nice tempo. He played in that Ajax team that were phenomenal and drove through the Champions League, you know, to the semi-finals and stuff like that. You know, Scott would be a part of it for me. Scott McTominay would. I'd curtail how he plays. I think he's involved way too far up the pitch for me. He's a guy that plays centre-back for Scotland. So if you play centre-back for your international team and he's reasonably good at it, and he plays midfield for United, why aren't we playing him as a defensive midfielder who sits and screens? You know, why isn't he playing that role? Why are we looking for him to play the Frank Lampard role where he's arriving on the edge of the box, side-footing balls into the bottom corner every 20 minutes? You know, you've got to play to guy's strengths, as you said earlier. We seem to be putting square pegs in round holes, and that's a big issue. I think Aaron Wan-Bissaka would come out for me. And I wouldn't be putting Diogo Dalot in. We need a right back. We need a right back that can do both facets of the game. I think Wan-Bissaka can do one. I think Dalot can do the other. We need something between the two that can do both. You know, Dalot offensively is better than Wan-Bissaka. Wan-Bissaka is better defensively than Dalot. We need a guy that can do everything. Luke Shaw would be okay for me. Him and Tellez playing for the left back spot is okay. Jones was unbelievable the other night. You know, I'd want to see more of that. If he could keep himself fit and put in performances like that, he could absolutely be part of a 4 centre backs for me. Varane as well. Harry wouldn't be starting games for me, I have to be honest right now. He's miles off where he needs to be. He's miles off, you know, mentally, physically, everything. He'd come out of it for me. I'd be making a lot of changes to what we have out there, but I'd be making a lot of changes on the proviso that this is to help us go forward, you know, in the next 6 months, not in the next 3 weeks. You know, you've got to play Anthony Elanga if you want him to get better. Let's play Elanga on the left. Let's play Sancho on the right. Let's play Greenwood up front. There's 3 young, exciting lads. Don't tell me you can't press with 3 lads like that. You know what I mean? Let's play Bruno in behind him. Let's play Donny van de Beek, who can set a tempo. Let's play Scott McTominay in behind him, who can shore up the centre of that midfield for United. Let's go with 2 centre backs. Let's go with 2, you know, a right and a left back that can go up and down the line. What's wrong with that? Now let them play. Give them a set of tactics. Let them go and play, and let them keep going and playing, because they'll get better as they're given time to play. And as you're giving them the confidence to go, yeah, you know, what we're not saying is every time someone has, you know, a bad game, we whip them out straight away. If they've got a prolonged period of bad games, they come out. But they do also have to be able to learn on the job as well. We don't give them time to that. Bad game, out you go. You know what I mean? So it's got to be, you know, you've got to have a little bit of patience there and stuff like that. But for me, you know, again, I'd have Jesse involved.
I think if the fans see those changes that you're talking about there, I think they would be more patient. They could see what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Whereas I think at the moment, a lot of the impatience in the fan base is because they don't really know what's being tried or what they're trying to do.
It's too similar to what's happened in the past.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at something and the picture doesn't look right, you're not going to appreciate it.
Mm.
You know, and that's definitely what's happening, you know, with United fans as well. They're looking at it and they're going, this looks like it looked before. What's different?
Yeah.
Because when we brought Ralph in, you expected sweeping changes, you expected the press, you expected youth, you expected energy. Looking at us the other night, we were devoid of all of those.
Mm.
You know, we did, as you said, we've two 35-year-olds, 37 and 34-year-old, whatever it was. You know, the combined age is 70 up front. You're not going to get the press and the energy and the enthusiasm from those two, are you?
There's no team at the top end of world football has that. And that's no disrespect about players in any way at all. I think Ronaldo has been phenomenal, one of the best.
Absolutely.
Best
you know, we're not
and I praise Cavani off the pitch, basically, in terms of how good he is in the box and stuff like that. But you have to play a certain way to leverage his best stuff. And if you can't deliver that, he's anonymous on the pitch.
Yeah. No, it's going to be, you know, I tell kids all the time, we're on tennis courts now, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. At United, we're trying to reinvent the wheel, because it needs to be stripped back that far to, and again, as you said earlier, maybe that's what Ralph is doing. And maybe, you know, that's something I would say Klopp did at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Klopp came in and pared it all back.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That's why
took the layers off.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking when I look at Ralph at the moment, because I've experienced it with Liverpool. It doesn't kind of look foreign to me, but it looks foreign to United fans because I've experienced it. And I'm just wondering, in 12 to 18 months, will we look back, say, on this show and go, now we understood what he was trying to do?
Absolutely. And, you know, I'd love to say that that's going to happen and that we'd be in a much better position. With Ralph in a role above, and with a coach out there, and with a set of play, you know, we've got to stop signing players for A, you know, but because they're English, B, because the lads down the road want them, and C, because they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Let's buy, because this is what we've done, you know. There's an English right back, Aaron Wan-Bissaka. You know, he's English. We'll buy him. We paid 50 million for him. There was arguably 5, 6, 7, 8 right backs in world football you could have got for 30 million that were better options than Aaron Wan-Bissaka was. But the narrative was, we want to buy young English players to, you know, to fill this team with like-minded players and to create this culture, and, you know, but it didn't work. And let's not forget, England haven't won an awful lot in the last 60 years, you know. So naturally, young English guys aren't necessarily winners. You know, like they haven't been doing this for. I suppose
that's probably a different argument as well, in terms of, you look at how the management of the English squad takes place as well. You know what I mean? But they tend to not play their best players either, or pick them.
But don't forget, that you still don't. It's not a built-in culture with them. You know, if you're looking at kids that are coming up through maybe Germany or France, right? They're winners. They expect to go and win. Yeah. They work to a level where they understand they need to work to get what they, you know what I mean?
Yeah, which would have been the United way up till 8-9 years ago.
Right. So
the expectation would you come in here, you're expected to be a winner.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's going to be an interesting. It's going to be an interesting, you know, 6 months for me, you know, and getting through to the summer, seeing what happens in this window. I think we'll see. I'm going to say 4 outgoings from the United squad in January. Now that's a big number.
4 going in January.
4 going out the door.
And not loans.
Well, loans are a possibility, but like you're hardly going to loan Jesse Lingard out. His contract's out in the summer.
Yeah.
So Jesse has to go in January unless he's signing a deal.
And
Pogba should absolutely be going in January because he's not signing the deal.
You have to try and recoup something off him now, don't you?
You know, listen, Barca, what's the chances with a swap with De Jong? Any chance? You know, can we get Frankie? We give you Pogba? Maybe they take it. Maybe they laugh. Well, you don't make the offer, you don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's certainly going to be a very interesting window for United. Certainly one that's going to like shape the final 4 or 5 months of the season as well. And I don't know. It depends on what happens at United in terms of how they finish out the season. If they can clinch that top 4, that looks very competitive at the moment. It's going to be very, very interesting. I think in order to do what they want to do and put the pieces in place that they want to put in place, your minimum you'll have to expect, regardless of trying to compete for silverware at the moment, is a top 4 has to be the priority, doesn't it?
You know, well, when you're going to, I think in previous years it might have been. I think again, with the kind of players maybe he's going to go after, and we're going to go after as a club, I don't necessarily think it's going to be all about whether you're playing the Champions League or not. You know, I don't think Julian Alvarez looks at this and goes, if they don't play Champions League, I don't sign. You know, I don't think so. I think he goes, oh, Man United, big chance, big opportunity.
Well, I suppose the flip side of that is if a Champions League side comes in and goes, you know, we can offer you this, and they turn his head.
Yeah, you know, no, that's a possibility.
That's
but I don't think, you know, and again, like if you're talking about, you know, maybe the boy Kamara, you might end up having to pay a couple of extra $1,000 a week to secure the deal on the basis that you're going to play Champions League the following season. So you haven't played it for a couple of years, kid. Miss out this season. You'll help us get back there next season. And there's an extra 15 grand in your pay packet every week to sweeten the deal.
Yeah, that's the difficulty, I suppose, in trying to convince these players, you know what I mean? Because again, they're looking. I mean, I often say to people as well, you see Ronaldo at 37, and of course that's like unbelievable, you know what I mean? But most of these guys get to 32, 33, 34, they're done, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's quite a short career, even though like people, when you're that age, you think 10 years is a lifetime. When we look back, when we're here now, we look at 10 years. 10 years to us is nothing, you know what I mean? It's when you think about it. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's great. Good old chat that we had there. Like,
absolutely, really man.
Interesting. Some good points you made. And it'd be interesting to see if that's the route that they take. Because it's good because we can look back in these episodes and go, you know, we pinpointed it right there.
We hit the nail on the head, and we usually do, in fairness to us.
Absolutely.
Pretty good.
As always, the upper tier on YouTube, if you could head over there, all our viewers and listeners, if you could hit the subscribe and bell notification button, obviously like and share on your socials, anything you can to help us grow. Audio obviously on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Google Podcasts. You'll find all our audio there. Let us know your comments down below. What do you think of Darren's ideas for the team? He's a true Red Devil. He's always there. He's a season ticket holder, which is really, really important to know as well. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. As if you want to contact the show as well, you'll get us on Twitter at _upper_tier. You'll get us on email. You'll get the upper tier podcast gmail.com. If you want to have a bit of fun with us, we're over on TikTok every day, dropping clips over there. Darren loves TikTok at this stage. He's getting
big fan
all the time. Until next time, my friend, a pleasure.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it.
Thanks, bro.